Now, as South Africa observes Child Protection Week, there is a new call to encourage people to think of positive action to help combat child abuse. The research group Media Monitoring Africa is behind a big new social media and schools outreach campaign. And with us now is the Executive Director, William Bird. William, welcome to you. We'll talk about the campaign in just a moment, but you've just released a new report on media's performance in reporting children. And you say that media in this country violates 2% of children's rights in all items that you monitored. So you want us to be part of the solution, but you'll also tell me that we're part of the problem.
Yes, part of the problem, but getting better. So when we did this first in 2003, so 10 years ago, we found that 10% of stories, so 1 in 10 stories, further violated a child's rights. In other words, they did something to them that either violated their dignity, they identified them. These things cause real harm to the children, either re-traumatizes them or it can result in them being physically abused or assaulted even further. So it's got a very real kind of impact, and that's down to 2%. I think the worrying thing is that children account for 39% of our population, and like most countries in Southern Africa, our population is getting younger and younger, and yet they only account for 9% of the stories in our news. And yet so many of our crucial issues need to be and are in fact child-centred. So how do we fix education? These are children's issues. How do we make sure that we reduce levels of violence in South Africa? These are issues about how we raise our children. So unless we start to increase that, we're not going to get very far. We also see that 5% of stories actually speak to children. So of that 9% of all stories about children, in those 9%, only 5% actually have children's voices in them, which is quite bizarre.
You've been unfailingly critical of that over the past couple of years about not reflecting what children have to say. Why do you think that that media is shy to do that?
I think there are a range of things. It's reporting on children and accessing them is one of the most ethically challenging areas of journalism there is. There's no doubt. You know, you can't just walk up to an abused child and interview that child, nor should you try, in fact, as some of our media sadly do in some instances. But you do need to be speaking to them about issues. So we know that Marikana, for example, a huge issue, yet we don't know about the impact of that on children, and yet we know that every minor feeds 8 or 9 mouths. Of those 8 or 9, how many are children? Probably at least 50% of them. Yet what is the impact of that on them? There's a strike, a metro bus strike. It means children can't catch a bus to school, they have to walk. What kind of risk does that expose them to?
Those are issues that are just shunted to the margins completely.
I'm Joyce Apela and I'm in Parkers Primary School in grade 7. I think that the media's coverage of children's issues tends to focus on the sensational issues while ignoring the many other issues facing children.
My name is Mali Zohu. I'm in Parkers Primary School and in grade 6. I think media should continue to protect and promote children's rights as that are included in the South African Constitution, especially when they are victims and their lives are in danger.
I am Winston Mango of Parkers Primary School in grade 7. I think media should present children with opportunities to speak for themselves about their hopes, fears and their achievements, and impact of adult behavior on decisions on their lives.
So how do you get media to become more engaged, given, and this is a debate that you and I have had in the past, that on the one hand, media has to be, in many respects, commercially minded. On the other hand, they have to report the issues. Often issues like this are not seen as perhaps interesting enough to compel readers, viewers or listeners.
I mean, that's interesting because some of the most powerful news images that you can think of, if I say 76 uprisings, there's an image that immediately springs to mind. If I say poverty in Sudan, there's and a vulture, you know exactly what image is springing to mind. So some of the most powerful news images that we've ever seen are of children. If I talk about Vietnam and the image that helped change things, it was of a child running down a road naked. Now, these are images that show that children have, in fact, real power. But to say that they don't, therefore, have some kind of power in terms of making compelling news is simply nonsense. What I think we do have is very poor ways, often, of telling news. It means we need to shift those things. Also, the idea that it's not commercially viable is also pure nonsense. We know that, for example, the very first advert that was put out by one of the world's biggest fast food chains, McDonald's, was targeting children. They knew you target children, you bring in 2 adults. So if the biggest fast food chain in the world knew that lesson from the word go, it's strange that our news media don't, and yet we see that they're going through all this turbulence. What they should be doing is targeting younger people, getting them involved in news, getting them excited about it. Because what we know, if a child is interested in news, they become an informed citizen. The moment they become that, they're likely to be a more active citizen, and that means you're going to get a better government.
All right, let's come back to the campaign as far as child abuse is concerned. You want us to highlight it. You want us to perhaps combat it in many ways. What is the campaign? How does it work? What are you hoping to achieve?
Well, it's an idea that's originally driven by various ministries in government, particularly the Department of Social Development. And it's a week that aims to sort of raise further awareness about child protection. And what we said, we wanted to do something where instead of focusing on the negative, because child abuse is an incredibly negative thing, and instead of making people feel helpless and victims, we wanted to see if there was something positive that they could think of. So we're putting out a call that says, send us the one thing that can be done to help combat or help reduce child abuse. So that we want to get people's ideas. We'll get that list, we'll compile it, we'll send it off to the presidency depending on what's there, and we'll see what parts of those things we can act on. We're working with our children, we're working with various media partners, including things like Crimeline and children's organisations like Childline, Johannesburg Child Welfare, Children's Institute. Or we've got good organisations and good people. We're trying to do something positive around an incredibly negative issue.
William Bird, Executive Director, Media Monitoring Africa, thank you very much. Now, finally this week, Royal Baking Powder turns 150 this year. And to observe the occasion, the brand created a 6-metre-high Mother's Day card. I'm told the biggest in the world. The giant card travelled to different malls throughout South Africa. Let's go behind the scenes.
This year is Royal Baking Powder's 150th year, and we really wanted to do something special. So we briefed the agency in terms of just reaching out to our consumers, celebrating that heritage and connecting with our consumers.
Crafted a lot of research around baking in the kitchen, what moms are baking, why they bake, what happens when they bake, and so on and so forth. One of the insights that came back was that out of all the things a mom does, taking kids to school, mending, shopping, tidying the house, when a mom bakes, she gets the most reward and recognition from her family. She feels really loved and appreciated. It's a very simple thing, but it produces a great result. And so out of that insight came this idea that we wanted to create something that would recognize moms and say thank you to moms for all the baking that they do. So hence this idea of creating the world's biggest Mother's Day card that mothers can come and sign, children can come and sign, families can come and sign to show their appreciation for mom.
So what has to happen is that people queue, they sign the world's biggest Mother's Day card, then they take a photograph, and then they get an amazing recipe book, a little cookie that's been made from Royal Baking Powder, and then they get their photograph printed out in a Mother's Day card that they get to take home with them.
I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing that all of us are getting together, celebrating mothers, celebrating the memories that we have about our mothers, celebrating the memories that our children have of us in the kitchen, cooking, baking. I think it's this idea of the biggest card in the world. It's an amazing idea. I love the fact that everyone's getting together.
It's great from a branding perspective because it's going to get people talking. People have a photograph that they can take home, and it's a branded photograph, and yeah, people are going to ask where they got it done. And they've got a fantastic recipe book which people will hopefully keep in their kitchens for years and years and years, and it will always be the Royal Baking Powder recipe book.
It really has been a part of my life, and whether it's been on an intimate level with just my mom, because she's an incredible baker, or whether it's been on a mass scale with attending funerals and things like that, it's been a part of my DNA and a part of my socialization. So I think it's such a beautiful and pertinent initiative as well. I mean, you can't say thank you better than saying thank you to your mom, and I think that's the important message that they've managed to filter throughout all of the PR and the marketing as well.
Oh, well, there's an old woman who came. She didn't even tell me her name, but she kept on just staying here and saying how much I love her. She was crying before, and she even hugged me and said I made her day today. So that was my most memorable moment.
It's not everyone who does this, like wish mothers a happy Mother's Day. So I think it's a very good idea, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Happy Mother's Day!
Well, sometimes the best way to push a brand is to go large, and Royal has certainly done that. It's not a new idea, but it'll get a brief bump in the brand noticeability stakes. That's this week's show. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.
that moves. enca.com.